Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Oaxis. Now, as we all know, Oaxis, which has been probably the third biggest streaming service for the last 10 years, as it is now 2032, and I look the same, obviously. Oaxis is basically taken over, other than Disney Plus and Netflix, because even in a fantasy world, there's no way it could beat those two. But, we can all talk about the service, its interface, or interfaith, as we all call it, all those things. But I figured I'd go by my top 5 kind of favorite shows over this past decade of Oaxis. Obviously, I can't show any clips from them because it's 2032, and the people who own Oaxis are really good at finding anything in terms of reviews with like video or anything, so I can't show anything. So it'll just be me talking because I wouldn't be allowed to, and this video would get taken down if I were to show any footage from any of those Oaxis shows. But we've all seen them because it's 2032, and you're very clearly have seen them all, so you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, let's go through these. It's just sort of a top 5 thing. It won't be too long. So number 5, I'm going to pick Tracer Racer. This was an interesting one. Didn't last too many seasons, but it's basically a show where you have to trace art, and whoever traces art the best and the fastest wins. Butch Hartman, of course, is who, if you didn't know, runs Oaxis and came up with it, and is an overall great person. There's no problems with him at all, and he runs this, and since he is the greatest of all time, which I guess that means artist, but he says he's the greatest of all time on this tracer show where everyone traces art and then he judges their tracing. But I don't think he does that. He's just good at judging it. Number 4 is Zack Snyder's Bible Man. It was interesting that Oaxis was able to afford Zack Snyder after the huge success in the early 2020s when, the Snyder Cut came out and everyone wanted the Snyderverse to happen. But Oaxis listened to those calls and got Zack Snyder to come in and reinvent Bible Man. This was controversial to some, but my favorite scene personally is when Bible Man snaps that guy's neck in Penn Station and said, "I'm about to go Old Testament on you." I thought that was cool. That was a good reinvention. Zack Snyder's good at those things. The third show on Oaxis would be Butch Hartman's Attack on Titan. It's pretty much Attack on Titan, like exactly, but drawn by Butch Hartman. So if you like that show, it's literally the same thing. I think they use the same voices. It's like the same exact thing. But if Butch Hartman drew it, kinda. It's sort of actually just like Attack on Titan. It's very similar. But it's Butch Hartman's Attack on Titan. So number 2 would be the documentary show called Artists Who Aren't As Good as Butch Hartman. That's an interesting show. He goes through the history of like Picasso, Craig McCracken, Your Dad, younger Butch Hartman, and just goes through. He can do Your Dad because they have that UI technology, so they personalize it, which is interesting. Even if your dad didn't draw stuff, it's like weird, but then you're like, wow, Butch Hartman is better than your dad. At the end of every season, he does one on himself and how much better he is than his younger self. It gets a little weird since this has gone on for 10 seasons, that now it's more about how he's better than he was in the first season, which gets confusing. So you really got to watch these in order, at least the Butch Hartman ones. And then number 1, I think my favorite thing that's ever been on Axis is the Butch Hartman story starring Jason Bateman as Butch Hartman. My favorite scene in that, and there's a lot of them, mainly about Butch's time at Nickelodeon dealing with how horrible they were and how they weren't really very smart and he was way better than them. So it's like very fair and balanced kind of biopic, but there's a part where he's fighting Dan Schneider, who's played by Josh Gad in this. And it's hard for Josh Gad because, Dan Schneider in the 2020s, we would learn to be an infamous war criminal, which we're all totally aware of the context of in the 2020s. But this is before the war criminal stuff, because he's still working at Nickelodeon. So Butch Hartman and him are having like this final battle at the end of the movie. And then Butch Hartman, he's almost has defeated Dan Schneider. Dan Schneider's like all bloody and like beaten up and stuff. And then Butch Hartman goes to Dan Schneider, goes, "I heard you like feet," and then kicks him in the face, and he falls down 20 stories and explodes. And that was really cool. I thought that was a really good way to take care of Dan Schneider. Some runners up would be, the 7 seasons of Imagine Nathan, the Nog Network games that are also on there, and also Conversion Camp. But I demote that because the reunion specials are bad because everyone who's ever been on it has killed themselves. Anyway, if you'd like to tell me what your favorite Oaxis show is, why don't you comment below in the comments. Tell me what your favorite one is. in the 2020s, which you've all lived through, and now it's 2032. So please leave your comments below, and thank you very much for watching, and subscribe, because we're still doing that in 2032 if you would like to. This was a total not parody and is a total real thing. So happy April Fools.